What's up, everybody? Before we get into this episode, we have to give a big shout out to all of our sponsors. Without them, this wouldn't be possible. If you're looking to train your athletes in person or remote, you need to make sure that you're utilizing TeamBuildr. I have had TeamBuildr since 2019 and still utilize it with my remote athletes. This makes everything simple, from the ability to program, have videos right there, wellness questionnaires. Loved being able to have it in person at the rack at Towson, and being able to have it in person now at Goldfinch. This has made my life easier as a coach. If you're still printing on paper, I don't know what you're doing. If you have a different software company, again, I don't know what you're doing. Check out TeamBuildr down in the link below. Hawkin Dynamics is the best option if you're trying to get any force plate data, or if you're trying to collect any isometric mid-thigh pulls. Not only can you do isometric mid-thigh pulls for the lower body, but I call it an isometric mid-thigh pull for your upper body, where you're able to do an isometric push-up into something where your back is pushing into a bar and your hands are on the force plate. I utilized Hawkin's force plates and Hawkin's software when I was at Towson. Still utilize it now when I'm at Goldfinch. If you're using the other competitors, I don't know what you're doing. Hawkin's customer service is second to none. Hawkin's software and their hardware, again, second to none. Check them out in the link down below. Are you expanding and need more equipment inside your current room? Or are you building a new weight room and you need to get some equipment? You need to look no further than Powerlift. I had Powerlift equipment when I was at Harvard, Iowa, and at the University of Maryland. I'm currently utilizing their stuff right now. I'm telling you, Powerlift strong, Powerlift made here in America, here in the great state of Iowa, made, manufactured. You have the ability for customization, whether it's on the bench, whether it's on the upholstery, whether it's on the bumpers, across the rack. There are countless options, making sure it's designed to your specific brand. It's Powerlift made, it's Powerlift strong, it's not cheap like all the other competitors, and the people inside of Powerlift are people that you want to be with. Check them out in the link down below. Are you or your athletes waking up too hot or too cold in the middle of the night? Or are you looking for a sleep tracker option that doesn't involve wearing a ring or a wrist or a watch, something on your body? Then you need to look no further than the company SleepMe. SleepMe makes chili pads, which keep your bed cold or warm depending on what you want. And they also have a tracker that will go underneath that pad, so it will be able to tell how well you slept. When I did a little study on myself with the Oura Ring and with the SleepMe tracker, they were within 97% of each other, and it was actually pretty astonishing how similar the two were. I love my chili pad. It makes me sleep great. I sleep cold. I actually wake up cold now. I haven't woke up warm. And pretty much ever since I've had it, I don't like sleeping on the road because I don't have the ability to use my chili pad. Bunch of former colleagues back at Towson got it. My stepmother got it. Check it out in the link down below. What's up, strength coaches? Welcome back to another episode of the Cheeky Midweeky, where we are making strength and conditioning not boring anymore. And we're doing that by highlighting the coaches and practitioners that are working in the field. Today, we have Emily Kramer coming on the show to you to talk about adaptive training, how you can work with handicapped individuals. And I'm excited about this show because this is something that doesn't get talked about a lot. And it is a population that needs us to give their best. So first of all, Emily, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to hopefully change some lives and make some coaches more comfortable coaching adaptive athletes.
You know, you and I talked, we talked on the phone and we've texted, and I'll never forget, we talked off air for anybody listening right now, but I remember how you talked about how like this has actually helped you with the mindset for your normal, not normal. And I put air quotes there, anybody that's
No, it's
listening.
okay.
I'm trying like, so what I mean is people that don't have adaptive and need to make changes to their programming, how it's actually helped you understand and communicate with them like, hey, this athlete, they come in and train. And we talked about it. Like, how did that translate and work for you? And then we're going to kind of Tarantino it back.
Yeah. And I think, you kind of started off on a good note, because I think a lot of people just feel uncomfortable with the verbiage or how do I call this athlete, or, and I think that's where we kind of need to fix things a little bit, where it's like, don't be afraid to call an individual, disabled or they're handicapped or whatever it is. Like, they don't really care at the end of the day. They're just happy to be a part of the gym. They're happy to be part of the community. And I think people need to get more comfortable, like going up to someone being like, hey man, what happened with your leg? Or, when did this incident occur? Like, give them an opportunity to talk about themselves and their current impairment. I think that's a huge thing for people. But as far as an adaptive athlete goes, for us, it basically is an individual that has long-term impairments, whether that's physical or traumatic. And, the other side of that, so someone that is like you or I, who doesn't have a long-term physical or traumatic impairment, we would be just considered an able-bodied athlete.
Gotcha.
So I think that's the easiest way to say is like, oh, my able-bodied athletes are, all the other classes. And then I have a specific class Monday through Thursday that is for my adaptive athletes. So I think it's important just to understand that they're two different entities completely, but at the same time, they're a huge motivation for my able-bodied athletes who come in and they're like, oh, Emily, my toe hurts and my stomach hurts. And I'm like, well, yeah. And I'm like, well, that's funny because Joe, who's an above the knee amputee, came in today and he had a great workout. And then all of a sudden, they're like, yeah, you're right. I have no excuse. And then they come in and they feel so much better afterwards. So, I love the fact that I can kind of pin those adaptive athletes on my able-bodied athletes to be like, hey, I don't really want to hear it today. I have so-and-so that's going through a lot worse. And it kind of helps them move through that. And I feel very proud of the fact that I can have those different athletes mix and mingle together. I feel very proud of that. Yeah. So we have a lot of classes where I have my able-bodied athletes and my adaptive athletes working out at the same time, which is really cool.
Dive into that. That's super cool. I want to hear about that.
Yeah. So I would say there's not a lot of gyms. Let me back up. Maybe not a lot of coaches that feel comfortable with working with adaptive athletes. So, hopefully by the end of this podcast, a lot of strength and conditioning coaches will feel more confident and comfortable working with that population. But that's the biggest thing is I hear a lot of times adaptive athletes saying, oh, I stopped going to that gym because the coach didn't know how to work with me. Yeah. Which is, that's definitely a problem in the system. That's a hole. And that's a gap that I'm trying to fill by educating and providing information and how you can work with these athletes. But, it's so important for athletes that are, have these impairments to be able to work side by side with an athlete who's just like you and I, who's doing, maybe a prescribed workout. Maybe they're doing the same workout. It just looks a little bit different, but it's so important for them to feel part of a community.
I couldn't agree with you more. And like, how do you go about doing the things that you do? Like give some people some of the nitty gritty, because I'm personally interested in it. I know they are too, because you're right. Like this is a population that does need to get served. Yes, it does make us uncomfortable, but I will say, I feel like society as a whole would make it more difficult for people to be like, oh, I don't know what to say. But then second of all, just being so unknowing about it. And so, I mean, I'm going to let the cat out of the bag. Like Emily eventually is going to put together a webinar for everybody. Like we're going to dive into this at Strength Coach Network. Like you're going to get to learn more about it inside the membership site. So this is just an appetizer, folks. Like there will be more
teaser.
Coming. There will be more coming.
Yeah. So in 2020, I had the privilege of working out with a handful of wounded warriors. And
you're right up in Virginia, right?
Yes, sir. We're in Virginia Beach,
and your husband works with the tactical athletes.
Yes, sir. Right? Yeah. Yes, he does. Yeah. So his organization that he started, his business is called Kaizen Groundworks. And so he works a lot with tactical athletes. We are a huge military town. So a lot of our population is veterans, wounded warriors. And so I had the privilege of working out with a handful of individuals that were amputees that were previously in the military. And that was when I was kind of exposed to the adaptive world as far as what adaptations they were using and how they were modifying to do the exact same workout as me. So we were doing like hero workouts where, there was box jumps or deadlifts and running, and these individuals were doing all of that with me. And they were just beefcakes. They were out there getting it. Yeah.
That's awesome.
It was really empowering. And I remember taking a step back thinking, I have never seen anything like this before. And of course, you have those elite warriors where their mindset may be a little bit different, where, they are trying to stay in the military. So they will do everything in their power to make sure they stay in. And as crazy as this is, if you are injured, let's say in the military, you will be asked to leave, but if you lose a limb, you can actually stay in the military. If you get an amputation and you get a prosthetic, you can actually still be active duty. So it's a very wild system. So a lot of those guys, which is, it's very mind blowing. But so a lot of those guys will choose to have amputations so that they can stay in the teams and still be part of active duty, which is mind blowing that an individual would even go down that route. But so there are a lot of amputees that are still active duty, still doing a lot of those very intense jobs, intense missions, all with a prosthetic, which is really cool. And then you think about, us, we're laid back, having a good old time, and they're out there getting themselves in really, really hard conditions with a prosthetic. So that's pretty eye-opening.
No, it absolutely is. Like that's definitely got I mean, you are filling a massive need for, not only those individuals, but for, people here in America, like to continue to help train that population. That's mind blowing about the amputation.
Oh yeah. And those guys really, I'll be honest with you, they don't really need that much coaching. They have the mindset of, I'm going to do exactly what you and I are doing, and they kind of modify and adapt for themselves. I would say it's more so the adaptive community, like spinal cord injuries, stroke survivors, some of those that, a lot of those long-term impairments that still go to physical therapy or occupational therapy, they don't really have a what's next. And so that's when we come into play. So that's how I kind of created Kaizen Adaptive Training, is because I wanted to help those adaptive athletes that wanted to get back to fitness, wanted to get back to sports, but they didn't have opportunities. Where some of those elite warriors, they still have those opportunities because they kind of go after them, or their, job allows them to. But for the general population, they don't have a what's next. And so that's kind of how we came into play.
So, hearing you talk about, I'm going to dive into that about with post the care in the traumatic injuries. But in terms of the amputee, there's a woman that trains at the CrossFit location at the same gym that I train youth athletes out of, and she has I think it's a below or above the elbow, I can't tell.
Okay.
She's doing pull-ups, she's doing snatches, and I was like, I'm in the middle of training these athletes, and I'm like, all right, I have to find, like, no, she's not doing single arm dumbbell snatch. No, she's not doing lat pull down. Like, she has something set up, and it was unbelievable to see.
And it's cool. It's like as a strength and conditioning coach, you can be very impressed by somebody's movement. You can be impressed by how much load someone's doing. I get it. I get impressed by somebody who is overcoming obstacles, and they're, out there still doing it when they have every excuse to stay at home, or, every excuse to not go to the gym. And they're doing deadlifts with a prosthetic, or they're doing, a one-arm dumbbell snatch, or they're doing pull-ups, like you said, like this woman was doing. I think that is a lot more impressive to me than somebody with a 500-pound back squat. I'm like, okay, great, I'm very impressed, you're an athlete. But it's someone that has everything going against them, and they are able to still go to the gym and still work on their fitness. I think that's very impressive to me.
Speaking of being impressive to you, then what is the most impressive thing that you've seen? And you can list top 5, top 3, but like, what have you seen? Because you got our listeners, they're like, what? Like, what is it? Like, what's the most impressive feat that you've seen that somebody overcome? And I know that it's every single day, and I'm not, but like, there's a few nuggets, just like with my able-bodied athletes. There were certain things that I'm like, man, I don't know if I'll ever see that again.
Sure. Yeah. And I understand both sides of that. I work with about 40 plus adaptive athletes, and they float in and out of our gym 4 days a week, have an hour of fitness every day, which is free, by the way, for them, which is awesome. But I have been so impressed, I would say, with my spinal cord injury athletes. Those guys, I have 3 in particular that are C5. So anything from below the nipple line down, they don't really have a lot of function.
Oh my gosh.
Which is, one of them was a professional baseball player. One of them was a firefighter previously, like before their accident. Yeah. And they were both in very traumatic accidents. One was a diving into the water accident, which, I could go on and on about that as far as people being smart, now knowing these things can happen. And then one of the guys who was the previous firefighter, he was on a motorcycle and hit a school bus. And in an instant, their lives were changed. in an instant. And when they started working with us, they were going to physical therapy, and they were actually sent to us from a physical therapy department from a university here in Virginia Beach, which is another great thing to kind of have our foot in the door with them. I feel very blessed there. But they came in, and I would say 0 to maybe 10% trunk control, inability to really use their hands or their arms. And I would say the mental aspect, where a lot of depression and all of that, of course, when you come from, an elite level of professionalism from both of their ends. And then fast forward to today. So let's say I started my program in 2020. So 2024, they both are able to do assisted. So I help them in some capacity, but pull-ups, which is really cool. And if anyone's listening and they're blown away by this, you can go to our Instagram or Facebook, and we put up videos all the time of them doing the most incredible things. But that's a huge thing. And then as well as they deadlift. One of them, I think he was like 135 on his barbell. And basically we put him on a bench, and then we put the barbell underneath the bench, and then he's able to hip hinge. We get him set up, and then he's able to use his trunk control to pull that bar up, which is just incredible. Because as you know, we all know in the strength and conditioning world, your deadlift is, pushing your feet into the floor. You're standing up with the barbell, okay? You're not pulling it with your back or your arms. You're just setting everything into place. And so for them, basically their legs are their trunks. So, the way that they are able to pick something up is using the strength of their core, which at some point they were told they would never be able to use their trunk again. So it's just incredible. So I would say that personally has been a huge feat. And then seeing the mental health aspect, where, extremely depressed, wouldn't speak, didn't, have anything to say when they came in. And all of a sudden they are hanging out with their adaptive athletes, like their friends outside of the gym. They're getting drinks, they're grabbing food. And then, I think that's such a beautiful thing to watch.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say after hearing you say that, other than like, that's just unbelievable. And what you are doing over there that's so amazing to hear.
It's incredible. And yes, it was like my passion project when I first started, but to see these girls and guys being able to regain their independence and strength again.
Yes.
Independence. Yeah, exactly. That's such a huge aspect.
And it's really interesting too that you talk about the mental health of it too, because I personally wouldn't have thought about it, and I'm sure our listeners out there didn't think about the effect that has on an adaptive athlete, but that's huge.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's the same thing if you and I were to get an acute injury. If we were to tear our ACL or you tear your bicep, you get very depressed. You're thinking, wow, all my training has completely come to a halt. I won't be able to do X, Y, and Z again. And then you go into that really dark place. And
want to level up your education for free? Go ahead and click the link down below, whether you're an aspiring, established, or head strength and conditioning coach, and we're going to send you a free email course that will help you take your career to the next level, regardless of where you're currently at in your career. Again, click the link down below for this free education course.
Yeah, so my bread and butter is small group training throughout the day with able-bodied athletes. So 5 a.m. all the way until 11 a.m. and then, again at 5:30 p.m. But we have our, imagine being 8 months pregnant and coaching all those classes. It's a lot. And it's funny because, I own the gym, I coach all the classes, and majority of gym owners or, coaches, to be matter of fact, they'll say, don't coach more than 3 classes in a row or even 2, because you don't really have a lot to give after that because you're just so drained. So just, trying to put that in perspective, I'm trying my hardest to, keep things still going on the business side, but also realizing, that these athletes are paying a lot of money to come in and train. So I'm just trying to keep my head above water, but, somehow we're getting through. But basically Monday through Thursday at 4:30 p.m. we have our adaptive class, which is 100% donation based. Our community is wonderful. They donate to us, and we're a 501c3. So we're able to bring in a lot of donations to keep that program growing. But then of course we have our able-bodied classes outside of that. And the really cool thing is the adaptive class is ending while the able-bodied athletes are coming in for like, let's say the 5:30 p.m.
Yep.
And they're able to, see each other, fist bump each other, ask how each other's, lives are going. And, they have that sense of community when they come in. And I think that's really important. All the athletes are always checking in with each other. I just feel very proud of the community we've built. There's, no judgment. There's no, you know how it is. And I think that there's something so special about the functional fitness space where people are listening to the same music. They are doing the same workout with each other. You don't have people in their little cliques doing their own little things. Nobody's plugged in, listening to their own music. Like, you're forced to now interact with somebody else. And I actually had an adaptive athlete who's a stroke survivor start last week. And he messaged me today and he said, the best thing so far about coming in was the fact that he got to interact with individuals that were like him.
Man.
And I thought that was really cool.
So the stroke survivors and is that the more difficult than the spinal cord injuries versus is amputees almost, for lack of a better term, and I'm not being callous, in the wheelhouse to eat, not easy, but it's okay, sure. That's kind of like most strength coaches, oh, you have an ACL injury, cool, we know how we're going to navigate this.
Sure.
Oh, you have a shoulder labrum issue, cool, we're going to handle that. Oh, it's a slap, no deal. But when something kind of different happens, that's okay, where you kind of got to dial it in. Is that the same thing with your population?
Yeah, so our population is a mixed class. So it's your stroke survivors, spinal cord, amputees, TBIs, a lot of traumatic brain injuries, and PTSD. Okay. And so intermingled in a class together, which takes a lot of brain power as far as, making sure everybody is staying safe for that hour. That's our main goal. But I would say, yes, when I first started, amputees were kind of my bread and butter. And then I would say the spinal cord injury athletes are probably harder. And that's just due to their level of injury and what they can and cannot do. So for instance, our spinal cord injuries can't use their grip. So we have these, a wonderful company called Active Hands, and they basically make grips that go on the athlete's hands, and then they can Velcro onto a dumbbell or a barbell. Or let's say the skier or the rower, they're able to hold on to all these implements, which is fantastic. But the deal breaker there is you now have to be able to go with that athlete and help them get into that piece of equipment. So their independence is a little bit less than the amputee, where my spinal cord injury athletes probably get the most attention because they need someone on them at all time to help them in and out of things.
How do you handle having new staff come in and assist you with it? Because that can't just be a plug and play, any intern come in. How do you
Sure.
handle that? And then how would you educate our coaches that are listening to be say somebody's moved to want to do the same thing, or are there other places that this is prominent? How can other coaches learn about it then, outside of being a member when you produce the presentation?
Yeah, exactly. I like that. So I do get a lot of physical therapy students, occupational therapy students. Yeah. Students are a huge thing for us. They need volunteer hours, which is awesome. So they come in and basically we have a university close by that sends all of their physical therapy students to us, which is amazing. And like I said, we're trying to bridge that gap, and they understand it. The healthcare side of things, they understand that there is a disconnect there. So they are very supportive of our program. We also have med students that come through, and basically,
my gosh,
it's incredible. And they come all to they volunteer their time entirely. They are not getting paid for any of this. They are just simply, they enjoy being with the athletes. They enjoy learning. And basically, when they come in, I am, it's hard for me because when I first started the program, I was the person that was hands-on with all these athletes. I didn't have a lot of volunteers at the time. And so to be the person now, I stand back and I do more of the logistics and the delegating. That's harder. It's definitely a hard role to kind of have.
Especially when you're good at what you do and love what you do.
Yes. And they're your babies, and you're like, oh,
yes.
I need to take care of this. So I'm slowly learning how to be better with that. But, my husband is really good at, doing logistics. He was a previous firefighter, and he could stand back and tell every single of his coworkers what to do, when to do it, and X, Y, and Z. Where for me, it's a little bit harder because I like to be in it and actually hands on. So it's a challenge for me. So I'm learning. But basically, I am telling them, where the athlete's going to be going next, how they can set them up, how we're going to safely do this. And the more they come, the more educated they get, and the more confident they feel with working with these athletes. Because at the end of the day, they're still injured. So we can't be nonchalant about how we handle them. And especially, a lot of our TBI and PTSD athletes, they don't do well with a lot of change or somebody sneaking up on them or communication, whatever it is. So for them, it's a challenge because they have to get kind of used to somebody.
Now, you can't be easily able to do, there's no circuit style, right? Like supersetting, because there is all of that time factor, or is that like once athletes are able to then progress because there's less time getting in and out of equipment, you are able to superset it, like getting into the nitty gritty of it. How does it, how do you do that?
Oof. Yeah. The programming side of things does take a lot of preparation. So, if there are coaches out there that are listening, they're interested in learning how to program for adaptive athletes, we do have an educational platform where individuals can go onto our website and they can actually take the Kaizen Adaptive Coach course. And there I've presented, how to work with these athletes, different things you have to be aware of and contraindications and all of those things. But the programming, it's taken a lot of learning as far as my side of things. Yep. And I would say we're still able to do metabolic conditioning, and we're still able to do strength days, and we're still able to do mobility work and dynamic stretching, all of those things. It just takes a little bit more effort and time. So you kind of have to build in that time frame because it's going to take them a while. So if I say, hey, we're going to do a 20-minute workout, a circuit style, like high intensity training style, understand it's not going to be high intensity the whole time. So we do more of RPEs. What does it look like for that athlete specifically? And did we kind of get that stimulus we were looking for? But it is possible to do a strength piece when they come in and then follow that through with a metabolic conditioning piece right after. It is possible. You just have to be really strategic with your timing and then keeping everybody on board, because when you have stroke survivors, they have memory loss. When you or they're just jokesters and they, they're there to hang out and have a good time. And so you kind of you got to rein some of them in sometimes. But at the end of the day, the coaches kind of hold the standard as far as what the hour should look like. And you kind of have to keep control, or you'll lose it very quickly. But I would say every time they come in, we always start with a conditioning piece. They're on the rower, ski erg, or bike. And then we follow through with some sort of mobility, stretching piece. And that looks a little bit different for each impairment. So if I want to, kind of work on shoulder mobility stuff, I'll put our seated athletes on like crossover symmetry. And then I'll have our, stroke survivors on the ground with a lacrosse ball doing soft tissue work. So it's going to look a little bit different, but there's the stimulus that we're going for is still the same.
So here's yet another wrinkle. I thought, okay, I work now in the private sector with youth athletes, and you don't always know when they're going to show up, at least in my world. Do you guys have, is it set schedule? Like you already said, it's the 4:30 group Monday through Thursday. Do you, if somebody shows up Monday, Tuesday, they skip Thursday, what do you do with them? Or they skip Wednesday, what do you do with them on Thursday? Again, the logistics of it all, because it is just mind blowing how impressive you're able to answer these questions.
Well, I will say that we have a scheduling app so that they can book classes ahead of time. So I know who's coming to the class before they even get there. So that way I can logistically figure out what I'm doing with everybody. But I do my programming on Sunday, so I'm ready to go for the week. But I'll be honest with you, I think that, you're going to have athletes that come twice a week. You're going to have some athletes that come all 4 days of the week. Regardless, you're doing mixed modal so that they are getting constantly varied functional fitness, right? But they are we're not on this strategic plan where they're training for something specifically. We're training for life. So just, yeah, exactly. So just general physical preparedness of, you know, we're going to hinge this day. We're going to do presses this day. But we don't focus on just a body part. We focus on movements as a whole and how they would translate over to real life. So I'm teaching these guys to hip hinge so that they can deadlift something up off the ground safely. You know, I'm teaching them how to do an air squat so they can sit on a toilet safely and independently. So at the end of the day, we're not, you know, they're not specific to some goal. It's just so that they can live a more independent life outside of the gym.
So how do you go about programming those things? Like for me, when I look at programming, it's knee dominant, you know, lower body, bilateral, unilateral, PC, hip dominant, knee dominant, bilateral, unilateral. And I could go through the whole thing.
Yeah.
How does it, like for you, what is your thought process? And again, I'm not asking you to give away the farm, but just like from a 10,000 foot view,
Yeah.
like what are kind of some of the big categories that you look at and make sure like, okay, this is how I want to get it done. And I try to make sure I get it done every, you know, week. Is it 2 weeks? Like, because you could take, like, everybody loves to have proliferance chart and everybody loves to have the residual gains chart memorized, but it's like, this is a completely different set of rules.
Yeah. And I would say it depends on who the coach is and what they're looking for. But like I said, with general population, I am completely satisfied with, I'm going to do, you know, strength work of deadlifts or presses, of pushes of some sort throughout the week. I'm going to do like a strongman day where basically they're doing, you know, a lot of sled pulls or pushes or, you know, farmer carry holds, things like that. And then one day is gymnastics where I have them doing, you know, some sort of pull-ups or, you know, anything that involves something on the rig in some capacity. But I would say each week it just kind of stays in that realm where I'm like, okay, I know I want to hit these things in some capacity. And then we try to get progressive overload, but like I said, it's hard with the adaptive population because it takes a little bit longer for there to be adaptations. So when you're programming for this clientele with this population, just keep in mind that any movement that you provide them is going to be progressive. It's going to be something that is going to get better each time, because where they started to where they are now, you know, like I said, it took 4 years for some of my spinal cord injury athletes to deadlift a bar. So you have to understand that their progressive overload is going to look a lot different than you or I. So, you know, and I think that just goes into a coach being comfortable working with this population and kind of thinking outside the box, like be creative. It doesn't have to be this regimented program each week to see progress. Every single time that they come in, you're going to have them progress in some capacity.
How did you have such patience with that? Because I mean, you know, it is difficult to go through and like you're trying to teach and you want it for them and you know that you need to slow it down. Like what was that brain shift for you and how did you go through that transformation? Because whether you'll admit it or not, that does require a high level of patience and ability on your behalf.
Yeah, it's been a lot of trial and error. And every time I've done stuff in the past, as far as programming, I learned something from it. So, you know, I've had them do intervals before where they do something for a minute and then they have a minute off and then they do something else for a minute. Well, the problem is I can't get the spinal cord injury athletes in and out of equipment in that minute.
No, that was what I was saying. Like that is what led to my earlier question. Like that's unbelievable.
Yeah. So you just learn every time and then you get feedback from them and they'll say, hey, that wasn't enough time, or hey, that didn't work, or hey, that hurt my shoulder. Whatever it is, you learn from that session and then you just progress the next time. And you said, hey, I remember that this didn't work well. So instead of a minute off this time, we get 2 minutes off. So you just keep learning from them each time. And it doesn't have to be so regimented every single time. Like, and you can adjust, you know, if you're a coach and you come in and then you have this idea of what you want the training session to go like, and you have a bunch of athletes come in and they haven't slept well, they haven't eaten well for the day, they're stressed. Why in the world are you going to, you know, stress them even more? Like, hey, everyone's looking a little rundown. Let's just do mobility work today. So you have to be able to be creative enough to think, okay, I got to adjust things just a little bit.
Yeah. Like I mean, this plays right into the name. Like, this is the name of continuous improvement, right? Or
Yeah.
like
Kaizen.
Kaizen, right? Like,
Yes.
I mean, it's because every day is that continuous improvement for them, because they, like you said, they're never actually achieve, quote unquote, like
Mm-hmm.
an end goal where they have discharge anymore, right? Like, because
Correct.
occupational therapy, you've actually come in and you've stepped in for that. To counter that, what I've personally found is when I was competing in strongman, when I was competing in powerlifting, or if I had a kickboxing fight, it made my training more better, serious. It gave a
Sure.
goal in mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like, okay, hey, on the last powerlifting meet, I bombed on my bench. Make sure I get my triceps stronger. Whatever. How do you keep the spirit of having something to train for, to make training better and more fun and competitive, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is? Or does this population of adaptive athletes not need it because they are overcoming something every day?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question. So there are levels of adaptive athletes. So if you have ever heard of wheel wad, they're
No,
basically an adaptive version of CrossFit. And so
that's
it's
what I was going to think based off of
yeah.
context clues. Yeah.
Yeah, so they do very competitive platform for adaptive athletes, spinal cord injuries, amputees. They have a long list of different categories for impairments. But those athletes, if you guys ever get a chance to watch them, they are, I would consider, elite adaptive athletes. They are doing muscle ups as a spinal cord injury, and they're doing, rope climbs in their chair. I mean, they're doing things that are incredible. So if you ever get a chance, watch some of the things that they do. But for my population, I would say that we're not on that level. And we are more so acute injuries that are very traumatic injuries, so long-term injuries, but they might have happened a couple years ago. And they're just trying to regain some sort of independence again, regain their strength again. So I would say I'm on the lower end of those adaptive athletes. So know that there's not really a specific goal in mind, like, hey, we're going to go compete in Raleigh, North Carolina in December, where they have this huge wheel wad game. Right now, we're just trying to make sure, are you coming in for the week? And I know that sounds silly, but like, we check in with our athletes to, hey, where were you today? Everyone was asking about you. Or, why are you going to sleep at 4 a.m. and waking up at 1 p.m.? So these things are kind of where I focus my attention. And then hopefully eventually down the road, they'll want to be competitive in the adaptive sports. But right now we're just trying to get through the day to day.
Yeah. And I mean, that's got to be, that is the main priority. And getting through the day to day, what are some of the nutritional recommendations? Like, because BMR, does your basal metabolic rate change based off
Yeah.
of the different limitations that you have? Like, how do you go about navigating that?
Yeah, that's a very tough subject. Very, very hard subject. And I am not by any means a registered dietitian. So
Correct.
it's,
Sorry.
you're fine. And it's fine because I make sure I try to stay within my scope as much as possible. But as far as their nutrition goes, yes, everything changes when you've been injured to that sort of level. And so what you can consume or should be consuming is a lot different than if you were active or if all your limbs were working. You're going to have a different metabolic rate at that point. But I think for us,
Want to level up your education for free? Go ahead and click the link down below, whether you're an aspiring, established, or head strength and conditioning coach, and we're going to send you a free email course that will help you take your career to the next level, regardless of where you're currently at in your career. Again, click the link down below for this free education course.
we're just trying to get them to not like focus on not going out to dinner or lunch every single day or eating meals at home or, hydrating appropriately. We're huge fans of Element at our gym, and I try to get our athletes as, hydrated as possible, and just kind of teach them and educate them on the importance of, hey, if you want to recover properly, you need to be eating and drinking just like you are showing up for the gym. The other things should just be as important, but I'll be honest with you, it is very, very hard. It's very, very challenging.
Now, would you also say, though, that's because nutritionists and registered dietitians might also feel the same way that other strength coaches did, that it's an uncomfortable conversation, and rather than having it, it's just, okay, figure it out. Like, is that part
Yeah.
of the problem? Would that be a niche that you could, any registered dietitians listening out there, we've had tons of RDs on the show, like this is a population that you could be serving.
Yeah, no, I think there's definitely a hole there. And I would love to see someone step up and really take that and run with it. Because I think there needs to be more education. Because, yes, it's really challenging to look at an athlete who was maybe a professional baseball player previously. Now they're in a chair, they're C5. And, yes, his intake is going to be a lot different than it was previously. Not that he had the best nutrition habits before he got injured, but he knows that. he was living off Red Bull, so he knows that. But ultimately, yeah, I think somebody needs to fill that gap. I would love to see that.
How much, you talk about the local community, but like how has the growth that you've seen from 2000 up until now, like what has been some of the things that you've seen looking back 1, 2, and 3, ultimately coming up on 4 years now?
Yeah. Yeah. The community has been unreal. And I say that because, so we became a 501c3 last year, which has allowed us to be able to reach more organizations, reach more companies who want to donate to the growth of our program. But before that, people were just giving money because they were so enamored by their sibling or their loved one being able to do these things again, that they couldn't stop talking about it to people. And they just came forth and wanted to be a part. They wanted to volunteer. They wanted to raise money, whatever it was. And that was even before we became a 501c3. So extremely supportive. And I just think they love watching too, the Instagram videos or the Facebook videos of, one of our guys, Brandon, doing a burpee for the first time, who's a stroke survivor, And so it's just like, they love they feel like they're part of it too, when they watch them do things that they thought they could never do again. For instance, that gentleman was told he would never walk again. He would never walk again. And here he is, he deadlifts with a trap bar. He does burpees. He hangs from the pull-up bar and does knees to chest. I mean, stuff like that. You're like, why is this even a conversation you're having with these patients? Like, give them some sort of faith to be like, okay, I will maybe progress one day, but to say like down to the T, you are not going to walk again, just blows my mind.
Has this might be, I don't know, like has it made you a little bit jaded towards typical like to people that say that type of stuff? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, like, and if you're like, hey, I'm not answering that, cool. But like, and I say that because I broke my foot and it was like, hey, you're not going to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm just hard headed. I'm like, well, now I'm going to do it.
Oh yeah.
Like, I don't know, like, has it, and I ask because I feel like a lot of people post COVID or post this, they completely turn their back on people. And I don't know, I'm just interested in that.
Yeah. And I'm very outspoken about this. So I don't have any problem speaking on this matter, but being 8 months pregnant, I've had a lot of negativity come my way as far as, oh, you shouldn't be lifting that much. Oh, you shouldn't be running. Oh, you shouldn't do this or that. And I go to my first doctor's appointment, and the woman looking at me, I think I was wearing, leggings and a muscle tank in some capacity. She says, oh yeah, you shouldn't be lifting over 10 pounds. And that was and I was like, well, could you maybe read the room a little bit and maybe understand, like, this is our livelihood, So I think that sometimes doctors get into this, and they're wonderful and we need them, but and there's no negativity anywhere, but I think that there needs to be more of an open mind to, giving some sort of, yes, maybe in 5 years you'll be able to walk again, or who knows what will happen. But I think that there needs to be more than that, cookie cutter reading the book or reading the textbook, like understanding the patient as a whole or understanding the athlete as a whole, to know like they're able to do a lot more than you think.
Yeah. And so I also asked that because my friend, he's a personal training client of mine. He's also my chiropractor, but his brother's wife runs a course on pregnancy for women and like helping them understand the whole process of it. And like, they are very much like, whatever you've been doing, keep doing. Like, okay, maybe if you're a power lifter and you like, as you get closer and closer, you're not going to be able to keep hitting a 500-pound back squat.
Sure.
Like if you can still back squat 200 pounds, because that's what like 40% of your old 1RM, like do what you've been doing and just pay attention to your body. But like don't just go and abandon what you were doing, because that actually is good for you.
Absolutely. And it makes your, labor so much easier. It makes the whole process
That's
so
what he
much
said.
easier.
Yeah.
And so it's just, it's interesting that, it's not just the adaptive community that kind of gets this negative feedback as far as their impairment. It's also the, the pregnant women or the elderly that go in and they're told they're never, don't strength train, you're going to hurt yourself. And it's like, well, wait a minute, I'm going to fall and break my hip. And I'm
hurt.
now I'm going down into a very dark, slippery slope. So it's like, I think that there's so much room to improve as far as educating our healthcare providers to the importance of strength and conditioning and understanding that, this plays into an individual living a long, healthy life. And I don't think that should ever be, pushed to the side.
All right. So you guys opened doors 2020. Now it's 2024. Anybody listening? So where do you see things going in the next 4 years?
Ooh. Well, I would love to, right now we're in a 3,000 square foot facility. Yep. And we're right by the ocean front, which is great. So we're like a few blocks back from the ocean here in Virginia Beach. So I love the location, but I would love to get into a bigger facility, and I would love to have multiple adaptive classes throughout the day. Right now, our adaptive class hosts up to 10 athletes.
Yeah, I was about to say, what's the capacity for that?
Yeah. When it was just me, I would have like 6 athletes, but now that I have more volunteers, I've bumped it up to 10. But I would really love to kind of make that a little bit smaller so they can get one-on-one a little bit more. So I'll probably down the road love to add another class for them, get into a bigger facility. And then my main thing that I'm trying to push every time that I apply for a grant or something like that is to help us get a recovery center for these athletes. And basically it'd be completely free for these athletes. They would have access to cold plunges, to saunas, to Normatec compression sleeves. They would have meditation, massage therapy, all of these things that basically would be completely free for them to help with their recovery. And so that's a big thing that I've been trying to push. I'm just not really there yet as far as space and trying to figure out the logistics of that. But I think it would be a huge component to their recovery.
Do you see any plans to open multiple locations across the country? Like how big do you want to take this thing?
I think as far as franchising goes, the biggest that I want to go would be like a remote franchise where basically if there's a gym in Michigan that wants to become an adaptive program, we would give them basically an affiliate right to be called Kaizen Adaptive Training. And they would be one of our affiliates. Where basically I would guide them and help them throughout their time frame. And we currently have that available for them, where basically we give them all the tools and education to start their own program, but using our name and our logo and whatnot. But that's kind of as big as I would want to go. I'm a very big component of family ran business that is there. They are 100% involved. My husband and I and our little French bulldog, and now soon to be son, we're always there. We're at the gym and I want to keep it that way. And I don't want to lose sight of that really. And I think sometimes when you franchise out to too big, then you have other people just running your logo, your brand, your name. And I think that there's something so important about just keeping it close to heart.
Anybody listening to this far knows that you care a ton. What is your background? Because not only did you have to learn regular strength training, progressions, regressions, now adaptive athletes and the different subtleties that come there, and then learning to run a business. Like, what's your background? What got you into all of this?
Oh, I think I'm a gym rat at heart. And I did every sport possible. My parents were amazing. They put us in every single sport growing up, and they never said no to anything. And I think that kind of bit me in the butt a little bit because when I went to college, I was so sports driven that I didn't focus on the academic side of things. So that was a shame because I kind of missed out on that side. But now I'm trying to make up for it. So I'm almost 32 years old and I love continuing education. I think it's so important. If you found your niche or you find what you love, like don't stop diving into it. And so for me, my career really took off in 2016 when my husband started a CrossFit affiliate. And I was one of his head coaches. And I was like, I love this. I'm so passionate about this. And wow, I got somebody to move better today, or they lifted heavier weights today. And I found out really early on that I was not a fan of people's excuses. And, there are small aches and pains for the day. I guess I lack empathy in some capacity. But I think you need somebody in your life to tell you things that you don't want to hear. And and I think that's important for a coach to give feedback to an athlete that doesn't want to hear it, but they know they need it. And, when I first met my husband, I was early 20s, didn't have my stuff together. I was figuring out life. And so my first big job was coaching at the CrossFit gym. And I remember thinking like, this is my future, cause I loved the coaching aspect, but, as far as, the education piece goes, I just couldn't stop at just, my CrossFit level 1. Like from there, it was just endless amount of certifications and, sitting in on seminars and, diving into the strength and conditioning world. I will say that there's not a lot of adaptive coaching material out there. So if you want to become an adaptive coach, it's very limited. The American College of Sports Medicine, they have an inclusive fitness coach or inclusive fitness trainer. That was a great test that I took, a lot of education there, but that was like the very first one. And then I was so passionate about that I started my own online coaching course. And now I have an in-person coaching course as well. So a couple weeks ago, I had 12 attendees for our coaches course. People flew in from Kansas City, and it was just very cool to see people, they want to learn. They just don't know it's out there. And especially when it comes to, adaptive athletes, there's just not a lot of material. So hopefully we can change that.
That's what we're trying to do here right now.
Yeah.
We're trying to continue to raise awareness for this. And but how did that happen then? I mean, you were at the CrossFit gym, and then where did the adaptive piece come in? Like, how did it all play out?
Yeah. So I was at that gym with him for a few years, and then he was kind of ready to be done with it. And I wasn't financially stable to take over. So we closed it, and I started personal training out of a friend's garage, which wasn't even big enough to hold a car. And I did personal training and everyone has a story, of course, but my story is, I started in that garage, then I moved to an 800 square foot facility, which was like my first big, signing the lease. I think I cried over it for weeks because, you're just, very, emotionally tied to this. And you never know if you're going to fail. You don't know if, and you just have to take that leap of faith.
It's called faith for a reason, right? Because otherwise it would be called fact because you have all the information.
Yes, you have it and you're like, is this a good idea? And you got to think about it for a little bit. But anyone listening out there, if you're on the fence about doing something, just do it. And then, fix it along the way, learn along the way, and educate yourself along the way. I don't have a business background. I don't have a, how to run a gym perfectly background. I just learned along the way. And I had a lot of people who helped guide me. But basically I moved into this 800 square foot facility and I started my adaptive program in there. And having 5 athletes in wheelchairs in a 800 square foot facility it's not really appropriate. It's very, very tight, but we made it work. And fast forward, we were there 3 years, and then now we're in a 3,000 square foot facility. Yeah.
So does that mean you got 3 more years here and you're going to move on up into that place
Yeah.
that you want, or what?
Yeah. We have, I think 4 years, we have 3 years left, and then hopefully move into a bigger facility or expand where we currently are. The options are kind of limitless there. But I definitely foresee us doing some sort of growth. At least I hope.
What would you say to a young strength and conditioning coach right now that's, aspiring to get into the field?
I would say you don't stop when you feel comfortable or confident in your field. Um, Keep trying to become the best coach there is, and don't compare yourself to other coaches. I think that's a big flaw that a lot of coaches have. They look on social media and they think, oh, that guy has it put together. He's got, he's working with elite professional athletes, whatever it is, but don't compare yourself to anyone. I've never compared myself to any other gym. I've never compared myself to another coach. And I think that has really benefited me because at the end of the day, somebody's always going to go to another gym or another
Right.
coach,
You're right.
So if you just continue to make your product the best, you will draw somebody that wants you. Like I think, there's coffee shops on every block, or there's, a fast food restaurant on every block, but you're going to find the right clientele that wants to come to you. So just keep trying to be the best, and you will get the attention you deserve.
What about somebody that's established? They've been around for a couple of years.
Um, I would say keep putting yourself out there. My husband, a prime example, he is one of the smartest guys I know, and he sometimes gets, imposter syndrome, where he's like, oh, I don't think I should do that. I'm not qualified enough, or I don't know. And he has, he's got a CSES. He is so smart, and I just kind of keep doing these things, whether they're podcasts or TED Talks or, I keep getting myself in these situations because I'm not afraid to put myself out there. Do I have maybe their credentials that I should be having behind my name? I should have them, but I don't. But I put myself out there because maybe somebody wants to hear what I want to say. So even for the elite coach that has been in the game for a long time, don't stop pursuing these opportunities that maybe you think are outside of your comfort zone or outside of your professional skills. I'm speaking at the NSCA next weekend in
That's
Lynchburg,
awesome.
Virginia. Thank you. And on the list on the ballot is all these speakers. I think there's 7 of us speaking, and after their names are PhD, CSCS, all these things, and then you have my name, and there's nothing after it. But that's okay. Like I'm not worried about that. I just want to be able to speak about what I know, and hopefully I can help another coach that's out there. But I think sometimes we get caught up in, oh, I don't, I don't have the credentials for this. You just have to put yourself out there.
I'm going to double down on that, everybody, because I just heard Jeff Bezos say something. There was a video clip from a while ago that I saw where he was saying, like, don't be concerned with your competitors, be concerned with your customers, because when you're worried about your competitor, you're not always going to make the best decision for your customers. But if you're making the best decision for your customers, you don't need to worry about what your competition's doing because your customers will come to you. So
Correct.
yeah, I want to
Absolutely.
double
And
down on that.
yeah. And I would love to be, compared to him, of course. We're on the same level, obviously.
What would you tell your old self right now if you were going to give a piece of advice to Emily 10 years ago?
That all the stress and all the tears and all the confusion about where you are in life will all make sense down the road. And I think when I was very young, I was very lost, um, as far as academics go, or sports, or where to live. I was very lost, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. Um, and I worked every single job there was, until I found where I belong. And I think that more people should do that because, I think sometimes you feel pressure to go in exactly what you're supposed to do. So, whether that's a doctor or a firefighter, or, your path ahead of time. Unfortunately, I did not, and I felt very lost, but I just kept grinding. And even on the days when I thought, is this really worth it? Am I going to be successful? Maybe $1 in my bank account. Um, it all pays off. You just have to be willing to actually put in the work. Owning my own business now, I don't take rest, not rest days. I don't take, well, probably I should do more of those, But I don't take days off as far as work goes. There's no calling out. There's no, sick day. Those things don't exist. And I'm sure most of the listeners agree with me on that. But at one point I worked a job where I couldn't wait to call out. I couldn't wait to tap out.
Yep.
You're like, this is not my day,
Yep.
Yeah, that's that's a thing. And I think everyone's experienced that. But I have found something now where I can't wait to wake up and go change lives for better for the day.
What's something that you wish people knew about you that they don't know about you?
I was an equestrian and I went to school to ride horses.
I did not know you could do that.
You can. Unfortunately, there's no scholarship involved there. So you still pay a great deal, but you ride for the school. So I rode for Randolph College which is in Lynchburg, Virginia. And unfortunately, academics were not a priority. And so that didn't last long. But my point being is yes, if I could still do it, I think I still would. If I could still afford that lifestyle, it's a very expensive lifestyle. Where I'm sure our son will have him joining the military at 18 or something. No, let him figure it out. But my parents were wonderful. They put me in everything, and they were so supportive.
If you were an animal, what animal would you be and why?
I would love to be a leopard.
A leopard?
Yeah. Supple. Supple like a leopard.
Shout out Kelly Starrett on the show before everybody.
I want to be fast and supple.
How about a car? What car would you be and why?
Ooh, I had a lot of experience in a red Hyundai that was a stick shift, and it taught me a lot. So I would say that car, for some reason, has been in the back of my head ever since I was 20 years old, and broke and basically living out of my car. So I would say the Hyundai stick shift.
Very nice. What would be one last thing that you would leave everybody with about, what's the biggest message, the last mic drop moment that you want to leave with everybody?
Yeah, let's all make a difference in somebody's life. Let's all make a difference for somebody with impairments. And I think making people feel included. So sense of community. Community is huge for us. But if anybody wants to know more about Kaizen Adaptive Training or Kaizen Athletics, we would love to have you check out our website or Instagram, Facebook, and, check out some of the things we're doing and get involved. And that's another thing too. Get involved in your community. Don't just stay within the four walls of your gym or your facility. Get outside and put yourself out there.
I couldn't agree with you more. I actually just came back from volunteering at the food shelter at my church earlier today. And
there you go.
Couldn't agree more. Get involved, help out other people, understand how nobody has this life figured out perfectly. But if you can go out and help make another person's day better, I could not agree with you more.
And I think that our businesses thrive when we support other businesses. Support your local business. And we're having a 1-year anniversary at our facility tomorrow, and I have 6 vendors coming in, all local companies. So I think it's so important. You will do well as a coach or as a business owner if you support other businesses. That's just the way it goes. If you're like, oh, I'm too good for them, or I'm not going to, they don't need my support, you're wrong. We all need each other's support.
That's the mic drop moment, everybody.
There it is.
Have a great rest of your day, Emily.
Thank you.
Congratulations on making it to the end of the video. Why don't you celebrate by watching more videos just like it? You can also help us on our quest to placate the algorithm gods by liking, sharing, subscribing, and commenting. Thank you.